Hey guys, what's up? FindicareX here, come back at you with another battle report analysis. Today we have Adeptus Mechanicus versus Necrons. I think this is a real treat. I've just watched the video once, so I have a couple ideas floating around what I talk about. However, just like the previous video, it's going to be pretty off the cuff. We like to do things live here. So we're going to get more of my sort of unvarnished and unfiltered thoughts here. All right, I'm not going to bore you too much with a big preamble here, so let's just get right into it.
Next up is the Adeptus Mechanicus versus Necrons, two highly advanced factions with radically different battlefield philosophies.
This matchup leads heavily into map control and technology. The Adeptus Mechanicus excel at fortifying positions, building powerful bases, and churning out armored firepower, while the Necrons are relentless, durable, and capable of turning slow pressure into overwhelming force. Okay, welcome back to a new multiplayer match of Dawn of War 4. This time I'm playing the Admech.
And I am playing the Necrons.
And Admech, very different from Space Marines that I played before. Have a lot more units, much quicker. So, I can expand a little bit more aggressive.
All right. I just want to point out here, like already we see something kind of interesting in terms of the sort of base building design asymmetry between the races. So unlike in the previous match where we didn't have any dedicated builder units, this time we do seem to see one in the form of a Cybernetica data smith here. Build structures, can perform repairs, good versus vehicles. So I think that's pretty interesting to note because just like in the last battle report, we saw the ability for vehicles to kind of repair themselves. There was this button here. The Death Dread was able to activate this to sort of like activate repairs for a cost. This button here is the reinforcement button, and for vehicles, I guess it's repair. But for the Admech, I wonder if they're also able to self-repair in addition to the Dadsmith being able to repair vehicles, or if the Admech are purely reliant on these Dadsmiths to move about the battlefield to repair their vehicles. I think that's a interesting note that perhaps the Admech had different avenues to be able to repair the vehicles, as well as the fact that they just have like a basic building unit, kind of more similar to more classic style RTS. So that kind of seems to me that the Admech are going to be more of the SimCity base building faction than perhaps any of the other factions. All right, let's continue.
And also what I want to do is with the Datasmith, these guys that are the builder units basically, I want to build up a...
All right, before we continue there, I just want to note that this little animation here, I love this little animation here. It's very bespoke to the Admech faction, as well as it's very reminiscent of how some of this stuff is described in the Horus Heresy books I've been reading. For example, when it comes to conquering new worlds, you kind of get one of these scenes in the first Dark Angel book. I forget what it's called. But when the Imperials first come down onto Caliban, you get this scene set up for you that that great ships are come down from orbit and just dropping down like these huge industrial machines and literal factories just being plopped down onto the middle of these forests and just clearing out the land. So this kind of is very reminiscent to me of that sort of description where like these large industrial machineries just come from the sky in great ships, or in this case little rocket things. Maybe there are, you can imagine there's little ships in orbit around you, but of course we can't look up in the game, we're looking down. So I really love this sort of animation feature for the Admech buildings. It's very, I think it's very authentic to the 40k universe. All right, let's move on.
Noosphere Network. So basically, whenever I build a building, I try to make sure that the next building is, within the network, because what it does is it makes the network stronger, and a stronger network means, buildings produce for cheaper, or, turrets fight harder, stuff like that.
All right, I'm going to pause there. Got a lot to discuss right there. There's a lot of information just got revealed. So first off, the Noosphere Network. In the lore, the Noosphere Network is basically just like a Wi-Fi wireless network for the Admech people. They have like little implants in them that are like connected to this Noosphere Network, so they're all able to communicate like wirelessly between each other. You know, so it's not like full on constant telepathic hive mind communication, you know. However, it does give the Adeptus Mechanicus people the ability to sort of communicate with each other like over long distances, as long as they're connected to like this network, right? So they can't communicate to each other from one planet to another through the network, but while they're like on the same planet or like, in the same vicinity, they're able to access this network to not only communicate but also transmit data and things like that, you know. Once again, this Noosphere Network was also introduced in one of the Horus Heresy books, the first Mars book. I forget what it's called. Definitely check out those books if you're interested and learn a bit more of the details and the lore. But let's go to the gameplay here. I'll rewind a bit. He hovers over a bit of the tooltips here.
The next building is, you know, within the network.
Before we go look at the tooltips, you can see here, there's a bit of a red line and then the green line appears, right? I think that shows you how far away you're able to build Admech buildings and still be connected to the network. So it looks like you can still build buildings, perhaps, but then far away from your base, but they won't be connected to your network. So if you want to be an efficient Admech player, gaining new sphere of network strength, you have to build kind of like in little steps by steps to slowly spread out your network, a bit like a web, right? Slowly spread that out to develop your bit of a sim city of a base, right? So
what it does.
Yeah, he builds it here, and I imagine this little plus 1, plus 3 number is like how much strength is being added to your network. Here we go. Network strength 1
makes the.
So we saw. Let me see if I can rewind there on network strength 2. That seemed to have more tooltips. Come on. There we go. So unlocks research, acquisition at any cost. So these all, that's the name of all the researches that you can unlock by getting network strength 2. So that seems to me to be the primary way that Admech are going to like tech up and tier up throughout the game. So unlike previous RTS games, like including Dawn for One, where you kind of can just like upgrade your main HQ building to different tiers and unlock a whole different suite of different technologies for the Admech, you don't like just upgrade one upgrade button from like your base and just be in the next tier, right? You slowly tier up with all these different network strengths by adding to your base itself. So we see here these different buildings are going to add to the strength, as he's described here, and the different amounts of strength and tiers of your network are going to give you different bonuses. Sounds like not only to units, but to your buildings as well, like your turrets.
Makes the network stronger, and a stronger network means, you know, buildings produce.
So it seems here that one of the primary features of more network strength is just reduces the protection costs for units from this structure. So that's a very interesting mechanic as well, that the more base you have built out, the more efficient you become as Admech, as well as being able to just tech up through your tech tree. So, you know, there's kind of like a twofold effect going on with the Noosphere strength. Well, more than twofold, because there's also going to be benefits to the units themselves, I believe, as well as to the turrets, based off what he's described right here, as well as in some of the developer AMAs and interviews. All right, let's keep continuing.
Use for cheaper, or, you know, turrets, fight harder, you know, stuff like that. And so, yeah, one of the big things I want to do is build this Noosphere network.
Indeed, indeed. And as for the Necrons, my primary objective, what I want to do is I want to spread the power matrix, which is this funky looking effect that you can see on the terrain here. It is spread, as you can see, by every or almost every Necron structure. So Necrons don't need power or requisition or all those other things that the vermin species require in order to host their armies. We have only one resource, and it's called Dominion, which is earned by spreading this power matrix. The further out we spread it, the more we earn of it. The Power Matrix also grants additional bonuses to our units on it. So,
okay, before he continues there about some of the effects of the Power Matrix. I think it's very interesting what he just said there about the Necron's sort of creep/blight mechanic in terms of how it generates resources, right? So just like in Warcraft 3 or StarCraft with Blight or Creep, we have Dominion here. You can see on the ground that the buildings spread out this Necron Dominion throughout the map. And as he said there, that your income is directly tied to the amount of Dominion, right? How much like Necron Creep you have going out on the map. I think that's a awesome, very cool mechanic when it comes to Necrons. It definitely reminds me of the sort of Dawn of 1 style of Necrons, where they had a pretty asymmetric resource style. They didn't rely on requisition. They relied solely on power. But this time, they don't even rely on either of those two resources. They have their own resource, it seems, noted up here. And I gotta figure out a way to get that title off the screen when I'm doing these battle reports. Anyways, you can see in the top left over there of the Necron Dominion income, which is its own unique thing for the Necrons, which is a great way to push the asymmetry of the factions. So just right off the bat, we have some great asymmetrical base building designs between the Admech and the Necrons, who definitely seem to be pushing that aspect further than, let's say, the Space Marines. And we saw in the previous battle report, we seem to play very similarly to how they appear in Dawn of 1. So I'm really glad to see that we have some great asymmetric mechanics being featured here. That really makes the factions feel very unique between one another. As we see here, these convergences, I believe they're called, are generating Dominion. So over here is the Necron Citadel, generating 25 Dominion. 4 over here, 1 over here. So the fact that both these convergences are one generating more than the other seems to me kind of reminiscent of the Battle for Middle-earth 2 resource mechanic, where you build these farms, and the farms have a little area around them where they efficiently sort of collect resources, right? And if you build another farm type building next to it, the efficiency of that next farm greatly decreases of how much income you're getting, to the point where it might not even be worth it, right? So it seems that the Necrons not only are going to be able to generate Dominion just by conquering the map, right? But that's going to be tied to your sort of building placement as well. So I think it has very interesting implications for base building for Necrons. Additionally, I really love this design because it kind of like definitely plays into one of the core principles of Dawn of War, which is needing map control in order to generate income. Normally that's accomplished just by capturing points on the map, but for Necrons, it's like even more tied to map control, right? Because the very map itself is generating income for you based off how much Dominion you're spreading. Very cool mechanic. I love it.
They gain improved HP generation. They regain members faster. All Necrons basically automatically heal slowly over time. And we can speed that up as long as they are on the Matrix. So that gives us a big advantage in combat.
Interesting point to note there. We saw in the previous battle report that Space Marines did seem to be able to also heal while out on the field. However, it looked like they had to be out of combat. But I believe it's Elliot playing Necrons here. Elliot seems to be implying that the Necrons, while they're on their Dominion, can heal in combat. So I wonder if Necrons will be able to also heal at a fast rate outside of combat, like the Space Marines, or if their sort of healing aspect is only tied to when they're on their Dominion. And as he said there, it seems like to be able to get that healing while they're in combat, So that's a very interesting sort of, again, another asymmetrical way to differentiate the healing mechanics when it comes to different factions.
So the further we can spread out.
Okay, let's look at this listening post for the Necrons here. Protocol Relay provides requisition. Oh, sorry, that's just requisition points. That's like the basic tooltip for requisition points. Obviously, Necrons don't use requisition, so we want to look.
We do hit a maximum at some point.
Not there. I believe the tooltip's coming up soon.
But with this, it can still benefit us. at some point for our...
Let me rewind for a second. Sorry about that.
The further we can...
Armor. Oh, okay. I didn't actually notice this. So right here, it gives you the armor value for the building. So right here it says armor 0, and reduces damage taken by 8% for each point more than the attacker's armor penetration. So that's very interesting. I didn't actually see any of this in DAS Battle Report. Very interesting to note that this is kind of giving us some insight how the armor mechanics work. So it seems like a building or unit is assigned a particular armor value, and the attacker has a particular armor penetration value assigned to them. So that definitely seems to be like a bit of a spectrum when it comes to how effective units are versus how effective units' armor value is, as opposed to in previous Dawn of War games where like a unit has a particular armor type and a certain weapon has a particular weapon profile that has a certain percentage effectiveness against those different armor profiles, right? But it seems to me here that we're not going to have all these different weapon types and armor types. It just is going to be a spectrum, kind of like how it works in tabletop, where like a unit just has an armor penetration value that's calculated against a unit's armor value, and then it kind of determines how effective that unit is based off those two numbers. So I think that's very interesting to note here, and has like tons of balance implications. Obviously, I'm not going to comment too much about like how strong certain armor values are versus others, because that's something we need to kind of experience in the game. But a very interesting note to see that seems to be how armor is going to work in armor penetration weapons as well, and it's going to have very interesting implications of how higher tier units will interact with lower tier ones. All right, let's continue.
Spread out. We do hit a maximum at some point for our Dominion, but with this, it can still benefit us greatly throughout a match.
Right, and I assume these 3 points.
That gives us a big advantage in combat. So the further we can spread out.
I'm trying to figure out exactly how the Necron's listening posts benefit the Necrons. Because they obviously don't use requisition, right, or power. So I wonder if it's going to be like Dawn of War 1, where when they have like one of these protocol relays, it just kind of boosts their production efficiency rather than boosting their income. And I'm trying to see if there's like some tooltip I'm missing.
Maximum.
Maybe there's one right there.
Combat. So the further we can spread out, we do.
Here we go. Okay, I finally found it. I could have sworn I've seen this before in the video, but now I finally was able to capture it here. So here we have the protocol relay, the listening post structure for the Necrons. Reduces unit production time, prevents enemy capture, upgrade to equipped weaponry. All right, so just like I said, it's going to function very similar to Dawn of War 1, where these listening posts not only are like little fortifications, but they also make it more efficient to reduce production time and what have you for different Necron unit build queues. So very interesting note there. I love that. I also love how this is like a callback to Dawn of War 1 Necrons, where they have they're sharing some similar mechanics that they had there, but it's also being pushed much further in Dawn of War 4. So I love the fact that they're taking inspiration from Dawn of War 1 here.
Hit a maximum at some point for our Dominion, but with this, it can still benefit us greatly throughout a match.
Right, and I assume these 3 points here will probably be very contested. So what I'm trying to do now is basically spread the network to the points, because this helps me in 2 different ways. First of all, my network grows, which is good, but also then when I build turrets there, all the turrets become much more powerful.
Indeed, I already saw that.
All right, some interesting things to note there again. I wish they would just not cut so much with different perspectives, so I can keep like my points for the Admech and Necrons more cohesive and not jump between one and the other. But that's what we're doing. We're doing it live again, baby. We're doing it live. So let's rewind here again.
Because this helps.
So we have these cogitator relays, right? And as Jan, I'm going to butcher his name, Jan, just described here that these cogitator relays not only are connecting, as you can see here, with these different lines that show you the connection path between different buildings. Not only are they connecting and therefore boosting your strength of the Noosphere network, but they're also connecting like turrets as well. And these turrets are getting benefits like buffs while they're connected to the network, you know. So I think this has interesting implications to how the Admech are going to be able to expand out and claim different territories to hold, as well as, you know, so these concentrated relays are very reminiscent for me of like pylons. You know, they're cheap and they just serve to kind of like boost the power and the infrastructure of the Admech base, kind of like in some of the Protoss. So they're not unlike pylons. The relays aren't necessarily making the buildings operational, but they're definitely connecting them to the network to get the full primary benefit out of your buildings when it comes to the Noosphere network. And additionally, like pylons, I wonder if we're going to get like an Artosis pylon moment in Dawn of War 4, right? Where there's just one relay that's connecting all these different turrets and buildings to each other. And if you can snipe this relatively fragile relay, you can like kind of depower or like debuff all the buildings around it. And the units as well. I can't recall if I remember reading that the Admech units get benefits from the Noosphere as well. I thought in the AMAs they may have said that. I might just be making it up. I haven't actually seen any evidence of that in this video. Maybe we'll see later. But it seems to me that the Noosphere network has far-reaching implications, not just for your infrastructure, but for your fortifications and units as well.
In two different ways. First of all, my network grows, which is good, but also then when I build turrets there, all the turrets become much more powerful.
Indeed, I already saw that you are trying to take this point on, so I've sent some scarabs out to fight your rangers.
Yeah, scarabs very annoying. They are pretty fast, can fly, and not super easy to kill, and so they are the best like harassment unit in the game, I would say. And of course, as always, you know, he managed to get the Necrons into melee combat with my range units. And my rangers are much stronger than scarabs in range, of course, but if you manage to basically...
I actually just know something here that I didn't notice before. Let me rewind here.
Rangers are much...
So you see they're retreating now, right?
Scarabs in
and
range,
then,
of course, but...
Bam! So they actually got healed, and I would say reinforced. That's a reinforced sort of bar mechanic there on the unit icon, right? So... that's actually very interesting and also a little worrisome when it comes to the sort of implications of when it comes to tactical decisiveness and the ability to take fights. That these scarabs here just reinforce while they're retreating, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. You know, it's definitely different from any other game with retreat mechanics in them. So I'm just going to put a note here right now. I'm going to go to my notepad. Go to my notepad. Let me close my files here. So, unit reinforcement mechanics able to activate on retreat. So I'm not sure how I feel about this. Honestly, I feel like with the ability to be able to reinforce while retreating, it might be a little too hard to be able to decisively take a fight, i.e. be able to like get squad wipe and like really feel like you did something worthwhile to beat your opponent, right? Because if you can reinforce on retreat, it seems like it might be a little too hard to be able to decisively take a fight and like push an advantage. Well, if a unit can not only cleanly disengage from a fight, but basically heal while doing it at the same time, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure that's a good balance implication. So I'll just put it in my notes out and maybe revisit it later. As you can see here, I have a couple notes already from watching the video, which I'll go over a bit as we continue the video. But for now, let's continue.
If you manage to basically bind me into melee, you know, then I struggle because I can't use my best weapons.
One thing you may have noticed is that the Necron units are generally quite powerful, but not particularly mobile. And the main way that they get around this is through teleportation or translocation technology. The main way that they do that is through the use of Canoptek spiders that they can build through the Canoptek Foundry, which creates tomb pylons. These can be placed anywhere on the map, and as soon as they are placed, you can put units in the reserve, placing them into the tomb citadel, and then deploy them from that reserve to any tomb pylon on the map.
All right, I love what I just saw there. Like the little Canoptek Spire comes out, and the spire makes a little burrow, makes a little nest into the dirt, and out comes this the sort of pylon building that he's describing. It's going to add a sort of like a way to rally your newly produced Necrons from the reserves and kind of teleporting over here. So I really love that mechanic for the Necrons, like once again boosting the asymmetry and similar to the Space Marines that have reserves where they can be dropped anywhere in the field. The Necrons, to sort of make up for their very slow movement, have different ways to be able to quickly maneuver around the battlefield, particularly when it comes to defending their dominion, right? Which definitely accentuates to sort of like the slow, methodical, unstoppable force playstyle he described at the beginning of the video, where Necrons, once they claim territory, it seems like it might be very hard to push them off it, right? So I really love this sort of design feature of the Necrons, where they have these buildings that can help fortify your dominion by quickly maneuvering and or translocating your Necron warriors throughout your base.
Right, and as you can see here,
I also want to go back here for a second. We can see here some on-field cover by the looks of it. In the previous game, we didn't really see any of this on that map. We saw like a building-looking piece of cover, but none of these sandbags or in walls. But here we do see like some cover that based off the previous Dawn of War 4 trailers, looks like units are able to sort of snap to and be in cover. So I'm not sure if Necrons are actually able to use cover. Perhaps that'd be an interesting way to help balance out some factions. Like maybe some factions, like the Necrons, they don't care about cover. It's just like an unstoppable marching force, that doesn't rely on measly cover. Whereas like perhaps factions like Marines and Orcs are more reliant on using the cover tactically to help take fights, So I think that might be a great way to also, again, boost the asymmetry between how different faction playstyles might behave, Like if the Necrons don't really get to make use of cover, but they're powerful in different ways, I think that'd be a great way to sort of not only differentiate their playstyles, but also, like I said, increase the asymmetry between the different races.
Lead them from that reserve to any tomb pylon on the map.
right, and as you can see here, my Noosphere network is growing and growing.
Okay, I just want to take note of what we're seeing here. Like we know before, the Noosphere Network does seem to be tied to the technology level or the tier level unlocks for the Admech. Because you can see here, this upgrade requires Noosphere Network Strength 4. And you can see up here is their Noosphere Network. It's also down here, right? So he's at like Strength or Tier 7, if you will. So this has a lot of implications of how like Noosphere Network is going to interact, and like so unlike the so kind of like the Orcs where they build wad bears, so the tiers directly tied to the amount of buildings they have. Very similar sort of mechanic with Admech, but it seems to go one step further to having all these connections be required, And unlike the Orcs, who by the looks of it in the previous video, they didn't lose their tier upgrade, their tech level, when they lost their buildings. I wonder if for the Admech, when you destroy their different buildings and therefore reduce the network spread and strength, if that also means they'll lose strength and therefore lose access to these technologies or different units that require certain network strength. It could be that once you reach a certain threshold, you don't lose your access to those certain tier level upgrades in units, or maybe it does. So maybe that I think that'd be very interesting if you're able to sort of like go after the Admech infrastructure rather than their units to do a lot of sort of economic and overall sort of macro damage to force the Admech to sort of rebuild up their base, because obviously they seem to be very reliant on their Noosphere network. All right, let's continue.
Unlocking all sorts of research.
Okay, I want to make note of all these different researches here. Again, I'll bring up my notes here. I'm going to be talking about the free research design that we're seeing here. And just like the last video, I really think these researches are going to need more opportunity costs between upgrading different researches. Let me explain that a little more. So we see here, he's just immediately clicking every research he has access to, and why not? They're free. You know, he might as well start queuing them all up. So I kind of fear that's going to have a bit of a shallow and, frankly, a bit of a brain dead mechanic where the player just, once they build a building, they just immediately click every upgrade, click, and like this sort of just like click and forget about the upgrades, you know, instead of making like sort of a meaningful decision about, all right, I'm clicking this upgrade because I need this effect now, and I'm paying this cost for it because it's worth it, you know. That is to say, I think the free research design in principle can work. As he said in the previous video, that researches are free, and the primary decision making analysis is like the sequence about which research you want to prioritize over the other, depending on your playstyle and what you're looking to get online. I think that's fine in principle. However, I don't think these times here are quite enough to really add that sort of meaningful opportunity cost decision-making process that they're describing, you know? Because it seems to me that you just click all the upgrades and like in the course of like, you know, 90 seconds to 180 seconds, or in this case, you know, let's say, you know, these are all 180 seconds, even though they're not. So that'd be 3 minutes each, 3, 6, 9, 12. So you say in the course of 12 minutes, you can get all the upgrades, you know? I'm not sure that's quite enough time to really push home the idea that you're really prioritizing one researcher over the other. I feel like if these time costs were like at least double, let's say like instead of 120 seconds, it was 240 seconds, and instead of 3 minutes, it was 6 minutes. I feel like then you're starting to get much closer to the intended design territory of, okay, the sequence I'm upgrading these researchers really matters, because at the moment it seems like you just upgrade to these 120-second researches, and there's only a 2-minute interval between having one research and waiting for the other. So it's only like 2 minutes of you like actually like feeling like the research you chose first is actually affecting you, as opposed to just waiting the other 2 minutes and having all the resources online, right? So the proportion of the game time that you're playing with one research unlocked is relatively small, and therefore not very meaningful in terms of which researches you're prioritizing to accentuate your playstyle. So because of that, I feel like there needs to be much more opportunity cost associated when it comes to choosing one research or the other. There's been other suggestions as well. I remember one person in the Discord, Stratagems, I believe his name was. He kind of came up with suggested the idea that when you upgrade these researches, the next subsequent research will have a time increase. You know, so maybe it's okay for the first research to be relatively quick to upgrade, but the next research will have like a 20% time increase, and then another 20% time increase for the next research, etc. for each building. You know, I believe there's many ways they can go about increasing the opportunity cost, and therefore the agency in the decision making the player feels when they're upgrading research, when it comes to tweaking the numbers of these researches. You know, it doesn't need to have a resource cost like in traditional RTS. You know, I think the free research system is fine, but I think it's going to need some tweaks to make it feel really sort of fleshed out, and you're actually making a truly meaningful choice when it comes to the research upgrades. You know, to sort of summarize my thoughts on this, I think in general it should be hard to be able to upgrade all the researchers in the course of an average game, right? Like you think about Warcraft 3 or Age of Empires, it's generally not easy to get every upgrade, right? Not only like your basic blacksmith upgrades or that upgrade your unit stats, but also like the unit tier upgrades. Like for Warcraft 3, like, you know, you're not going to like upgrade every single spellcaster upgrade. You know, you're really picking and choosing which one you want. Maybe over the course of a long game, you can get all of them, so you can kind of like really flesh out your army. And like in or Age of Empires 4 or 2, you have all these university techs, which are like high tier, and therefore over the course of the average game, you're not really meant to like upgrade all of them. It just should be relatively difficult to get all your upgrades, and that does not seem to be the case here. It seems relatively easy to get all your upgrades over the course of an average match, because like I said here, if these, let's say they're all like the maximum 1 to 80 seconds we've seen, right? That's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 minutes to get everything. Of course, you know, they're not all unlocked at the same moment, so So it'll take a little longer than 15 minutes to get all that unlocked. But I think it seems relatively easy to be able to get all those upgrades over the course of an average game, which seems to be like at least 20 minutes plus, where that should not be the case. So, all right, rant over about free research. Let's continue.
Because, Admech have a lot of stuff they can optimize and unlock, and this means that all my Skitarii units, for example.
All right, see our first look at the Skitarii sort of Wargear suites. So, you can rewind the video if you want, but I already saw in my previous watch of the videos. These are let's just rewind here. Let's just rewind. Why not? Transoranic. That's a tough Warhammer word. Transoranic arquebus. So upgrades a member's weaponry to increase range damage to vehicles. So these seem to be like some anti-tank rifles. Maybe like kind of like a PTRS from Company of Heroes 2. If any of your Company of Heroes fans are out there, you know what I'm talking about. So this seems to be a way to augment your Skitarii Rangers, to give them some different target access to be able to effectively deal with higher armored things like vehicles.
My Skitarii units for.
And here we see another Wargear option. However, this is not really a Wargear so much as like a sort of like augment to the unit, because it says it adds 5 more members to this unit. I think that's a very interesting way to help augment a unit to scale throughout the battle. So it's not necessarily just only about what Wargear they have, but also like what kind of sort of technologies and abilities they have access to that increase the stats a different way, So obviously more units is more pew pew. So it could be a cool way to increase their effectiveness over time. Because we see here, this seems to be the same upgrade, but it's grayed out. So I bet that he needs more Noosphere network strength or something to be able to unlock this, and therefore increase the squad size again and have the Skitarii Rangers scale over time throughout the game. I'm not going to quibble too much about like what these costs are. They seem, obviously cheaper than your previous Dawn of War 1 or 2 Wargear. However, I think it's to be expected because you have many more squad counts relative to previous Dawn of War titles when it comes to Dawn of War 4. So therefore, since you have so many squads, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for the Wargears to be too expensive, because otherwise you would just like tank your entire economy just trying to upgrade your squads with Wargear, So I think there's a very cool system they have here, though.
For example, now I have better weapons and they can get more models into the unit and stuff like that. So, this is important to keep in mind, basically, to make sure all.
So, as we noted earlier, here it seems to be the armor value, and this maybe is the armor piercing value. Maybe this is? I don't know. So I bet if we can scroll over this in game, it would kind of tell us like their armor piercing value and how effective they will be against armor. So that's something we'll kind of have to determine once the game comes out, I bet. But interesting to note that we're finally getting a more information to sort of divine what's happening here in the UI and in the battle.
Your units have the best stuff available.
Okay, so I've managed to teleport a whole bunch of warriors relatively close to the front line, so we're going to make use of that as soon as we've got this Convergence of Dominion set up, essentially.
Here we see some Canoptek Wraiths. So I think this is a very cool unit. Look at these. Oh shoot, what happened here?
Relatively
cheap. I pressed page down. Oops. Okay, moving on. So here we have some Canoptek Wraiths, and unlike the Dawn of War 1 Wraiths, which are kind of tiny, you have these Wraith units here.
Quickly spread the power matrix,
which are much bigger, and so they seem to be much more of a sort of like tanky like vehicle unit rather than Dawn of War 1, where it's just kind of like this basically sort of singular infantry unit that sort of is annoying to deal with. However, they seem to share a similar mechanic, can phase through obstacles. So I bet this button here is the phase ability. So I bet just like in Dawn of War 1, they'll be able to phase through things and be not only be able to quickly access a target by being able to phase through and reach it, but also being able to avoid damage while they're phasing, So just like in previous Dawn of War games, I really like the idea they have like these powerful abilities that can really change the course of a fight, and also be particularly effective to not only help take a fight, but also have a very specific use cases that they'll excel at more than others. So in this case, like a Wraith, the phase ability can help them get onto pesky ranged units that would normally be protected by other units in front, or protect them while they're trying to close a distance by avoiding damage. So very cool ability that we're seeing here on the Necron Canoptek Wraiths. All right, moving on.
It doesn't have a lot of other functionality, but that is its core functionality.
I also love how big they
and
are.
that
These are
will
some big
help us
boys.
with this coming fight, as you can see here.
Right, and I let my commander, SecX23, I ordered him to...
All right, something very important to note there. This is the first time I believe we're seeing a commander unit be able to attach to squads. You see down here, there's a little link icon. So he attached to the squad, and now we're seeing, like, I guess, a return to more of the Dawn of War 1 formula where commanders can attach to squads. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of benefits the attachment will bring. Like in Dawn of War 1, it was mostly it boosts their what's it called, morale on the squad, and B, sometimes certain units, I think mostly just teleporting units, like sometimes like the commanders were able to teleport the squad with them when they're attached, like the big mech and the sorcerer, who have natural teleport abilities but can also teleport squads when they're attached to it. So I'm wondering if what kind of benefits attaching units to commanders will grant in Dawn of War 4.
lead these units, and then I can get...
Okay. Another big moment to stop here. We see here a whole Wargear suite in the menu here for the commander here. We have like 4 different primary weapon options, as well as like it looks like little augments that aren't like your weapons, but like different abilities, passive upgrades, or skills you're able to upgrade to customize your guy. So I think this is this sort of Wargear suite is very cool. It has like a lot of interesting implications as well. For example, we see here some extra space in the menu, which I think adds a good framework to be able to expand over time and add more content to Wargear and upgrade options throughout the game, throughout the game's potential life cycle. When more content is added and we get more stuff, the game's not even out yet, and I'm already talking about additional content. But I just want to point out that it looks like this sort of UI menu is sort of primed to be able to sort of easily take in additional content when it comes to adding different war gears or options over time. And okay, let's take a look at some of these upgrades here. So right here we see one upgrade, Battlefield Processing Cortex. Increases XP gain and reduces damage taken for attached unit. So right here we see, well, I guess one of the primary effects of the unit attachment mechanic is like it really depends on what kind of war gear the commander has to that's going to relay an effect to one of your attached units.
Give him a couple of nice upgrades.
And another unit attachment upgrade, increase armor piercing penetration. But here's an upgrade that doesn't have an attachment sort of effect. This is just a passive ability that just affects all units. So so that's going to be interesting to see how different war gear is going to affect certain playstyles. Like perhaps you want to focus on a playstyle where your commander is always attached to your unit, right? And you get war gear that sort of benefits unit attachments, or you can get war gear that doesn't really have to work with unit attachments, right? And you can have them be more independent throughout your battlefield and in your engagements. So I think that's a very cool way to help accentuate what kind of playstyle you're going for commanders. Is he going to be supporting and attached to your unit more, or is he going to kind of do his own thing, or maybe just go be like a beat stick? Very cool implications there.
Make him and the unit a lot stronger.
All right, so I anticipate that this fight is going to be a little bit tougher, so I'm going to go ahead and build some resurrection galleries in order to support any fallen units. when you lose units, you can have those be selected within a resurrection gallery, which restores that unit over time when it falls in battle, completely for free. So building plenty of resurrection galleries will really help to bolster your forces if you're losing a battle. Losing more of the selected units while one is already being resurrected speeds up that resurrection, so that really gives you that effect of a non-stop oncoming tidal wave of whatever units you want to choose to resurrect. But you have to choose wisely. You can only pick one at a time.
All right, so that's very interesting to note there, that this seems to be the primary Necron resurrection mechanic. So unlike in Dawn of 1, where the Necron units will just kind of randomly pick themselves up whenever a model goes down, you have the Resurrection Orb. That's more like an active ability. This seems to be like the primary way Necrons are going to be resurrected, right? So it seems to me that has very interesting implications to how Necron units will regenerate over time. So you see here that they're able to auto-reinforce, right? This one's like reinforcing. So they have that effect going on. But in addition to that, you heard Elliot there say that he seemed to imply that the unit you've lost is the same one you're resurrecting. So I wonder if that means that that Necron units that are resurrected will like retain their veterancy they've been accumulating over the match. So I think that'd be a very cool and interesting way for Necrons to interact with the veterancy mechanic, right? So maybe that means that Necrons don't really have to retreat that much, you know? So like unlike the Space Marines or Orcs, who maybe if they want to preserve that unit and have them be able to level up over time, they need to like be much more cognizant about retreating throughout the match, getting to safety and healing up back in base, as opposed to the Necrons, who maybe they're much more apt at just sending their units forward and having them die over and over again, because you can just resurrect the same unit and still retain their veterancy. I'm not quite sure that's the case, but it seems to me that's what he implied, you know, when he's describing the resurrection galleries. So I think that has very cool implications about how Necron playstyles will go versus other races, you know. Once again, boosting more of the asymmetry that we're seeing in Dawn of War 4 between the races. Very cool. I love it.
So there we go. And we've got one right here, right now. So we're going to go ahead and set this other resurrection gallery for warriors as well. And we're going to start churning these out.
My Noosphere network is now at level 8.
So it seems like you select a unit type that you want them to resurrect, and it seems that once one of those available squads die, it will then start being resurrected. So it's not like an automatic thing. Well, it sort of is automatic, but you have to select which unit type you want to resurrect out of those galleries. So if you want to focus on all your warriors being resurrected, you can do that. Or if you have a particular squad that wants to be resurrected when they go down, you can make sure that resurrection gallery is dedicated to that squad. So that's very cool as well.
8, which is already really good, which means that I can now produce units a lot cheaper. And also turrets and so on are more powerful. So I can now really build a lot of units for relatively little.
Just trying to get a look at some of these units here. Onager Dunecrawler. Seems to be a relatively expensive unit. So obviously, you know, I think it's, you know, obviously it's a vehicle unit, so it's a higher tier, higher tech unit.
The resources.
Okay, and while you're putting that all together and you're fighting, I'm just going to build more resurrection galleries. Try and keep those warriors coming out.
I put all my units on auto-reinforce, which means that all the units are being, you know, healed automatically, but it's also, you know, a really big drain on my resources.
And we're going to go ahead and do something a little bit sneaky, and hopefully we can catch Yun off guard if we do so.
It's actually not easy for him to do something sneaky and surprising, because what you can see here, these greenish blobs, they are the Augur vision. So this is basically a way for Admech players to see into the fog of war. It's a kind of heat map, you know, and you can see where enemy units are on the mini-map and also in-game. And this makes it very hard to surprise attack Admech units, because you always get this little warning where the enemy might be.
All right, so a bit of things to take note there and discuss. A very unique Admech feature. I know you're being good. I know. I gotta finish this analysis. I do. So this unique Admech feature he's describing here, we have this Augur vision. You can see here on the minimap, right? These different heat zones of like he's describing it as units. So like the more intense the heat map is, probably the more density of units is around there. Does it relate to the unit's power as well, like their power level, or is the also relate to the buildings as well? Do the buildings contribute to the heat? I'm not sure, but I also want to take note that it looks like
so this is basically
what you see in the main map here. You can see these little heat maps on the main map, like described as well as in the game. And I'm pretty sure we didn't see this on this mini map when the game was first going on. So maybe you need like a certain level of Noosphere Network to be able to make use of the Augur mechanic he's describing. I think this is once again, another great asymmetric mechanic we're seeing here when it comes to the Admech. So perhaps the Admech don't have to rely so much on scout units and recon, because they can just make use of this Augur mechanic to sort of see through the fog of war, relatively speaking, in general, where certain units are going to be heading and where they should be responding or attacking. So once again, like I said, I think it's a great way to boost the asymmetry of how different factions playstyles will be developing over the course of a match, and like what different factions will be focusing on in terms of like the general strategy and tactics.
For Admech players to see how many units are on the mini map and also in game. And this makes it very hard to surprise attack Admech units, because you always get this little warning where the enemy might be.
That's true, but with this amount of warriors here that I've got going on, I don't think I need too much surprise. There we go. Okay, now a real fight's breaking out. We're throwing out the stratagems here.
So you saw there, like, I'll rewind just for clarity's sake.
This amount of warriors here that I've got going on, I don't think I need
clicks a stratagem,
too much surprise.
Centers it, and like sure, the Necron units are all like clumped up, prime target for an AOE off-map artillery to do a lot of damage. My biggest issue here, like I said in the previous video, is like it's coming out like basically instantly, you know. So there's basically no opportunity for the Necron warriors to react here, which I think is going to need to change. Like in all the Company of Heroes, as well as Dawn of War 2, these powerful stratagem abilities, off maps, what have you, whatever you want to call them, they all have like an indicator that that tells the players, hey, there's an ability about to be cast here, and it's going to give you like a couple seconds to note that and be able to react to it before it starts coming down and destroying all your dudes. The fact that it comes out basically instantly doesn't feel right to me. You know, if you're on the receiving end of one of these stratagems, it feels like you have no opportunity to react to it and be able to have like your opportunity to like, you know, use your skill or your reaction time to be able to mitigate what the player is trying to throw at you, you know. So it doesn't feel extremely fair. I just want to point that out.
It's breaking out. We're throwing out the stratagems here. All right, and I've thrown a gravity pulse on you to hopefully soften up your army here. It's done quite a lot of damage to my warriors, but fortunately, they are already well on their way to return, so we're actually going to go ahead and...
So you see here in the unit cards, right? It seems to me like the units being resurrected from the galleries have this little sarcophagus icon above them. So I think that's an interesting way that for Necrons to be able to... seems to be very good at producing lots of units throughout the match at once.
Put another one down here. So yes, Augur Vision is indeed, for the Adeptus Mechanicus, is very effective for predicting troop movement. But with the ability to teleport, it might give me the upper hand I need, because there is, I believe, like a...
So let me just point out here, like let's count how many squads are about to come out. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 squads in terms of Dawn of War 1 and 2 is quite a lot. Like even for Dawn of War 1, which is like the sort of the bigger scale version of Dawn of War versus 2, even in that game, like your squad, the number of squads you get is not like that huge, you know? Like I think I have a hard time recalling exactly what like the max number is. Like you increase your population cap over time. I want to say you get like about 5, 6, or 7 infantry squads, and then like a similar amount of different vehicle units as well. So you can have a lot of different like squads and entities out at once, but it seems to me that you're gonna have even more than that in Dawn of War 4. So I think that's very interesting to know that Dawn of War 4 is going to offer, let's say, a more even larger scale sort of game design and philosophy than we've seen in any other Dawn of War game. Even 3 also had like a lot, but of course all the units were like dying all the time because they're super fragile and all the elites are blowing them up, so it's a little different how many you have like at once. So it seems to be like that Dawn of War 4 is leading a bit more into of a grander RTS or a strategy and gameplay sort of design. Well, so a little bit more reminiscent of other RTSs like, I don't know, Total Annihilation or I don't want to say like StarCraft, because obviously the StarCraft actual mechanics and gameplay are a little different, but a little bit more like a emphasis on controlling lots of different units at once, rather than having a pinpoint micro of controlling a few units, particularly like in Dawn of War 2, that will be important. So it definitely has a lot of implications about what your attention and what your actual gameplay inputs are going to be focusing on, versus the other Dawn of War games. And it looks like it's going to be pretty different, and I'm actually excited for that. I mean, I will say I prefer the Dawn of War 2 style, where you have a very tactically tight experience between like just a few squads interacting with each other with very powerful abilities. Sort of not dissimilar to Warcraft 3 in that sort of style, However, like I can definitely get behind this sort of style here, because like, yes, it's definitely leading more into the emphasis of controlling a bunch of different units at once, and therefore putting less emphasis on one particular squad than previous Dawn of War titles. However, it's not totally going that far into that spectrum, because we still have emphasis on squad preservation as well as activatable unit abilities that we've been taking note of already. So I really like this balance that we're seeing here between Dawn of War 1, 2, as well as kind of integrating those in Dawn of War 4, pushing it further, evolving the series, and taking it into its own sort of unique identity for Dawn of War. So I really like that KingArt Games is really putting their own spin on the game, rather than just like remaking Dawn of War 1 on a one-to-one beat. I really think this is a very cool way to help modernize Dawn of War 4 identity, and like really push the design philosophy of Dawn of War, And despite all of Dawn of War 3's flaws, I do appreciate Relic's attempt at like sort of like trying something new, like I think like just like dipping into the same well can work, but it's also, a very like can be very stale and boring over time, whereas just like new design philosophy has a lot of interesting novel implications when it comes to not only Dawn of War, but RTS in general. All right, let's move on.
Like delayed Augur vision, like when it gets updated. And so if you start seeing a big blotch of red coming around the corner, then it might already be too late for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, let me just move my camera to get my cat in there.
In the meantime,
there he is. You good
dealing
boy.
with this
encounter
here, we're going to just further expand the power matrix, build a couple more sentry pylons. Well, now I think I may have you pinned here. Now we're coming from both ends. We're going to see how quickly that's going to go down in here.
Again, let me just rewind here. Let's count how many dudes the squads the Admech player has. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. A similar number to the Necrons. Perhaps a little less. Perhaps the Admech are going to be a little less focused on number of squads versus quality, sort of similar to the Space Marines, as opposed to, and maybe the Orcs and Necrons lean more towards into like this horde style of just producing endless amounts of different squads, So I really like that sort of a sort of asymmetry, perhaps, that within Dawn of War 4 that emphasizes squad counts more than the other Dawn of Wars, but within that philosophy, you have like factions like Space Marines who emphasize less squad counts for the quality of each unit, right? As opposed to Orcs who emphasize more squad counts and less emphasis on the quality of each individual squad. So I think within that design philosophy, there's a lot of room to add different play styles and asymmetry between the different factions that we see now and potentially the new ones that come out over time.
Now we're coming from both ends. We're going to see how quickly that's going to go down. There we go. Okay, we're going to throw down a Solar Pulse stratagem. That is Omnox's unique stratagem here, which should reduce the defenses of all enemy units on the...
So I'm guessing the sort of like green effect you see around the screen here is like the stratagem he's talking about with Omnok, as he said, which is like one of the Necron commanders that they revealed. So maybe this is like, so this is like unique to Necrons. I'm not quite sure what effect it's having.
Field?
Maybe I can rewind to see.
Solar, that's gonna go down.
He moused over at some point.
Okay, we're gonna throw down
Solar Pulse. Reduce damage dealt by all enemy units and negate all cover for a duration. Oh, okay. So it looks like this is like a global effect, That's interesting. It's interesting to see how different stratagems have different effects. Like some are like skill shots, some are like off-map artillery call-ins, Some are, this one seems to be just like a debuff for all enemy units. So interesting.
a Solar Pulse stratagem. That is Omnox's unique stratagem here, which should reduce the defenses of all enemy units on the field, and will also negate any cover. Of course, Necrons, don't require cover. Why? If you have no fear of death, then why should you ever use something like that?
So he just kind of confirmed there my suspicions that Necrons don't really need to make use of cover, to sort of play into the theme of like they're just like sort of not mindless machines, but the kind of like still like sort of determined machine marching throughout the battlefield, and they're not too concerned with their own individual safety, and to represent that they don't make use of cover, right? And like I said, I think it's a very great way to sort of increase the asymmetry between how different factions are going to be fighting different battles and the tactics they're going to be using.
We're just going to march forward, and we're going to try and like push forward as far as we can. We're going to see how long, whether Jan can deal with that or not. Let's find out.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely now something I want to hold. So I put some auto reinforcement.
So I also just want to take a quick note here, just to quickly go back to my global reinforcement point of the video. It seems like this is really cheap. Like I'm not quite sure how much these things cost, the Cataphrone Breachers, but 18 Ressurection and 2 power to reinforce what appears to be 1 out of 3 squads. Seems to be like not expensive at all, So that's another thing I'm worried about in terms of like the meta being developed. That it's going to be a little too easy just to keep always keep all of reinforcement on, because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you always want your units to start being healing up in the fight to always get the most battlefield efficiency power as possible? Because if one player is auto reinforcing all the time and the other is not, of course, one to auto reinforcing is probably going to win.
I hold.
Everything else being equal.
So I put some auto reinforcements in here just to make sure I don't lose the most important units.
I'm going to very gently start teching up here and trying to get some more effective units, because I'm starting to see here that you can now out-damage.
Like, okay, so like, it's good to know he's teching. He says he needs to tech up, so that these are all just seems to be basic Necron Warriors. You can kind of tell based off the unit icon and cards. But look at how many Necron Warrior squads he has going on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 Necron Warriors just marching throughout the field. That's actually kind of cool. I really like the fact that you just have like this endless horde of Necron Warriors coming out, and the fact that it looks like they're retaining their veterancy too. I'm not sure if this like maybe he got an upgrade that makes that have Necron Warriors start out with a veterancy, or if these Necron Warriors just have gotten it over time, and when they come back out on the field, they regain the veterancy that they've been earning through the Ressurection galleries.
Faster than I can.
But of course, these are low tier units, so of course, like it's probably much easier to pump out your basic infantry squads rather than like the higher tech units. That perhaps that's why the Admech player doesn't have as many squads out.
Regenerate them. And
when we want there, see something come out.
Warriors faster than I can.
So we see a couple of them. So we see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I rewind, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
How damn
So it looks like none of the new squads got added.
My warriors faster than I can.
Got the maybe there's some that's being cut off there. It's hard to tell, but it looks like the new. Actually, no. Here's one over here. So it looks like it does look like it's hard to tell, but it looks like it is the mechanic I'm talking about. Like some of the units have been getting veterancy when they get resurrected, and some of them are when they come out do not. So if it's a tech that makes all of them have one veterancy, I would expect to see much more veterancy icons come out when these guys finish being resurrected. But it looks like only like one of them are vetted up from the new resurrected squads, which seems to indicate, like I've been describing, that you're able to resurrect the same unit that died and therefore retain its veterancy level.
I'm gonna raid them, so that means I'm going to have to move on to some slightly more effective tactics from here on out.
I think I retreat. Don't want to lose my commander. This is a lot of Necrons.
Yeah. I've this is a pretty strong tactic that I've found. That
so many Necrons
can work with, but we'll see if it's enough to repel your attacks here. Ooh, there we go. Okay, we're gonna throw a gravity pulse stratagem over here, soften up your forces.
Let's get out of the way. I have some resource problems here because, as you can see, I have.
Okay, so this is very interesting note here. We finally get a closer look at the detailed breakdown of the income. So he has his total income, right? So despite so it seems to be like the I gotta move this title somehow in my next video. Anyway, so it looks like the green plus income number is not your total income, but your effective income. As opposed to the red number, which is your total upkeep or malice, right? So so despite him having a total of about 900 requisition income, his effective income is only outlined in green there, you know? We saw in the previous video that even the one requisition income tooltip outlined in green, even if that's smaller than your malice or the red parentheses, it seems to be like you're still able to get some upkeep. I mean, some requisition income rather than like none or have a minus amount. You know, so I'm kind of interested to see exactly how the two interact, especially when these two numbers, the green and the red, get closer and closer. Because we saw in the previous match that despite the Space Wing player having more upkeep, so the red number was bigger than the green number, he was still getting some income, you know? So it's kind of, I kind of want to see exactly, would be interested to see exactly how these affect each other. Because you can kind of see here, like, yeah, it seems, it's clear that, you know, he has 900 per minute minus 350 per minute is about 538 per minute. Which seems to be generally correct, but it doesn't seem to be like an exact 1-to-1 plus addition minus subtraction sort of a calculation going on, you know. So I'll be interested to see exactly how these numbers are calculated once we get our hands on the game.
Relatively high upkeep because my army is so big, and also when you control a lot of points, then each additional points you control gives you a little bit less resources. And both of that combined, and I forgot to build generators here. All of that combined meant did not have
as
much resources as I wanted to have. But now I have my stratagem back, so that is helpful. And also, I mean, his warriors are pretty good against a lot of things, but not against tanks, right? So these guys can hopefully.
I know. Almost done, oh boy.
Looks like I was able to repel the brunt of your force, but looks like it's going to take a little bit more. So I'm going to send in some wraiths here, using hyper phasing to get through obstacles and the like, and make sure that I don't get bogged.
There's the phasing ability in action there. Pretty cool to see. It works very similarly to how I described. But now it seems to be like these wraiths are being chewed up because attacking way too many things.
Yeah, my production is running well. Everything is relatively cheap now that my Noosphere network is big enough. But actually, let me make it even bigger, because even bigger means even cheaper units.
There we go. Okay, I've got one of the Necron Endgame units out, which is the Monolith. So we're gonna teleport this bad boy straight over here to come and deal with your forces. And we're gonna start deploying units from it, from reserve, same as we do with the tomb pylons. With the
It's interesting to know that these monoliths, like kind of similar to Dawn for One, are also going to act as like projection and / rally points to be able to teleport your Necron units towards the front lines, so they can support the monolith on the move. You know, another great callback to not only Dawn for One, but also the sort of classic sort of Necron style in lore and tabletop, and have these mobile monoliths where, you know, houses all these Necron horrors that come out and deal death.
tomb pylons. There we go. And then we're just going to move forward until we hit your...
So, interesting to note that you don't need a building as Necron, so like they can kind of like expand their base as they're pushing out, right? Very, very fluidly and quickly, as opposed to the Admech, we need a whole data smith to come out and build the building for them. So it seems to me like the Necrons, this kind of essentially the Necron playstyle of having this unstoppable moving force and slowly gaining dominion over the map, quite literally dominion. And being able to, like, so these units are pushing forward, and as they're pushing forward, he plops down his convergences to increase his dominion. Very cool playstyle we're seeing here.
Headquarters. Get our Lich Guards out. Oh my goodness. They were just taken out by that Scorpius Disintegrator. We're gonna have to take care of that. There we go. Ooh, that was a little bit too close.
So interesting to note here that he's also able to, you know, this reinforced mechanic is still going on for the monolith. So seems to me like these sort of single entity models like vehicles and commanders are also able to utilize on field healing as well, probably for a cost. That's definitely new and interesting. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. You know, obviously it's very deep balance implications. Obviously, like, I don't know if this mechanic we're seeing right now is balanced or not. I haven't played the game, but it's very interesting to note that you're not only able to reinforce squad members, right, but also able to heal like vehicles and commanders out on the field as well. I don't want to ramble too much about, like, you know, whether I think that's good or not, because I'm not sure. I'm not sure quite what to make of it until I really get my hands on the game. But interesting to know.
Probably shouldn't have done that. That's a mistake on my part. Oh, you got quite a few of these.
That monolith got chewed up by those tanks.
Oh no!
Yeah, that's the nice thing with the Admech. The Admech really strong production capabilities, and so especially when you come close to my base, you know, then you better bring the goods.
Okay, well, I guess if you come...
Yeah, so it seems to be like both these factions, the Necrons and the Admech, really excel at taking and holding ground, you know, but also at the same time having their infrastructure be a large part of their strength. So if you're able to sort of like harass or snipe the infrastructure, that might have some severe implications to the battlefield effectiveness of both these factions.
For the king, you best not miss, so I'm gonna give that another shot, but not to work.
Again, you know, like, he lost so many Necrons, but it just keeps building them through the Ressurection galleries, you know? I'm not quite sure if this icon is for the Ressurection gallery or it's something else. I assume it was for the Ressurection gallery, but maybe only one is being resurrected. These are just regular Necrons being built. It's hard to tell.
In the meantime, while you've been dealing with that, I've been restoring my legion of warriors.
Yeah, he's so many. Let's count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Like 19, 20 squads coming out. It's quite a lot, you know. Like I said before, relative to other Dawn of War games, this is quite, the squad count number is quite large, which is going to add a lot of uniqueness to Dawn of War 4's design philosophy and how it feels to play this game versus previous Dawn of Wars, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, but now actually I come into your territory and looking for convergence of Dominion. So if I destroy enough of those.
So we can see here, based off his Augur network, that he knows the Necron army is probably just sitting over here, especially since like there's a red heat map. There's probably a lot of Necrons rallying there.
He will have resource problems on his own.
That's very true. The Dominion the domain that a Necron can set up can be very, very strong, but it is relatively
oh boy, look at this. Drop Keep deploys a Knight Castellan, can be deployed anywhere in vision, deals area damage before deploying. So not only is this a very cool way to get a Knight on the field, it looks like to build a Knight, you do it from the build menu and just drop their keep, so to speak, down. Not only do you build it from the build menu like that, sort of similar to the Gorkanaut, but also you can use it as like a battlefield ability. You drop it right on the enemies. And it disrupts them and does damage.
Fragile
That's hard out.
Like if you don't have enough defenses from the center on,
he changed orientation. Interesting to note.
Yeah, also
see, they have the indicator for this, right? But no indicator for stratagems? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, so clearly they can do indicators, but why not for stratagems? Is that very purposeful? Maybe it is. Maybe they want stratagems to come out instantly, but if that's the case, the stratagems need to be probably reeled in a bit so they're not quite as impactful.
Let's see what we can deploy here. Maybe some sort of surprise.
Some missiles come down, and bam. We didn't really see its effect on infantry because there weren't any infantry for the keep to sit on, but look at this fucking thing. It's huge.
Yeah. Oh, no. This is going to be a problem.
The door is open.
I don't think so.
There's the Knight. Oh, that's so cool, man. Look at that bad boy. The Knight comes out.
Oh, and
he's looking to put in some work now.
Oh, your nice resurrection galleries. Because
I like, so I want to rewind there. Take note of its plasma weapon there. You can kind of see its animation charge up as it's about to fire, which I think is really cool. Adds some nice attention to detail to the different unit animations. Let's go back up a bit again.
Oh, and all your nice resurrection galleries, because
and he fires, bam! Look at that,
resurrection galleries
beautiful.
Here, each one resurrects one type of enemy, and so.
And this Knight's looking really good. It's a bit hard to make it look real good when I'm pausing the video because of the frames.
If I
but this looking like a great looking model. Like some people are saying that the game looks cartoony, the models are a downgrade. I just don't see it, man. Like, look at this, they look amazing.
Which makes it a lot easier for me.
Okay, time to take care of this. We're gonna have to get rid of that Knight. Fortunately, I've already got another Monolith out. We're just gonna teleport it as fast as we can. This is not looking great for me, but I still have a few cards up my sleeve, and we almost have that Knight down.
Another keep.
What I'll do is I'll see.
It's also quite expensive too. 1,000 requisition, 380 power. This is not a cheap unit. Like this is like super unit level of resources. Interesting to note that there's no unit cap on these things either. So like, given a long enough game, you can have like a full legion of Gorkanauts and Knights going across the field, which might be fun to see in team games or comp stomps or what have you. I'm not quite sure how viable it will be to get like many squads or units of Knights out and Gorkanauts or what have you. But theoretically, you can get as many as you can afford. So because there's no hard population cap in Dawn of War 4. Like the only constraint on your population is basically the soft cap of the upkeep, which, like I said, it doesn't seem to ever go into negative income territory, but you're definitely slow to your crawl given enough units.
If I can, there we go, get a few Canoptek Doomstalkers out to try and tackle it. Long range armor piercing should do the trick.
Oh no, my Knight. If only I had another one.
Ah, no, not for real?
Look at that. Like the keeps and the Knights are just huge. I love the scale they have here. I love it. Like, sometimes it seems like, the Skitarii are looking a little too small, but I think it makes a lot of sense because, they have to, like, put everything in true scale proportion to all the other units they have in the game, you know, as opposed to like, you know, Dawn of War 1, even Dawn of War 2, where they sacrifice some of the lore realism, so to speak, when it comes to unit scales in favor of some more readability. Like, for example, in both Dawn of War 2 and Dawn of War 1, the Imperial Guard are like almost the same size of the Space Marine, you know, which is basically more of a gameplay consideration than a lore one. But I'm really glad to see here that KingArt Games is being really authentic to the Warhammer 40,000 universe and really capturing the scale of the different units in relation to one another. That's really cool.
Got a whole bunch generated. Oh, it's just a little too late for teleporting that out. Ah, well, I unfortunately seem to have been hoisted by...
So we see here, yeah, I was supposed to say hoisted by his own petard. Necron Legion has been decimated, and this force of
not enough
Admech
defense here. I very aggressively
just
spread
pushing
the
into
power matrix,
Necron base with his
defenses here,
devastating
so...
firepower.
Oh, this is going to be a problem. I'll just put...
So this is pretty cool to see here. He's trying to build a turret. It's trying to phase in here, but this is the little production bar, so he's not going to get in time.
One down now.
Yeah, Necrons actually have pretty good turrets, and the smaller ones, they can actually teleport, which makes them especially nasty because basically you can, you know, push them wherever you want them to go with your front, you know, so that's... Oh, there it is. Oh. This is what I was looking for.
Yeah, now I'm in danger.
It's looking like a good game.
Well, it was a significant back and forth, Jan, but it looks like this is going to be a pretty decisive victory for you. Well played.
Thank you. As it should be, the Admech won. See you later.
As it should be. Praise the Omnisire. So good game there. I think there was a bit more of a dynamic back and forth between the two here. Unlike I would say in the last battle report, the orcs got relatively thrashed. You know, poor orcs. You know, poor orcs. We will need some real war boss leaders in the community here to really bring back the honor of the orcs or what have you, so they can make a good showing in the game, because we did not see a good showing in the last game. But in this game, we got to see a lot of the Necron mechanics and ability to like really show off that sort of legion of Necron warriors marching through from their base out onto the field versus the technology and power of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Very cool. I love everything we see here. Again, we see like another post-game report. This was about 24 minute, 2-second battle. I imagine here, like again, I think these levels will probably indicate cosmetics and different things like that you can unlock, similar to Dawn of War 2, as opposed to like leveling up your dude in the game and having to unlock things that way. I didn't see any indication of that in any of the battle reports. So I'm betting this is just like cosmetic considerations here. So a little progression you can get throughout the game by playing matches. Very cool stuff. I'm petting my cat over here. Yes, you like pets. All right, so that's going to wrap up the battle report. I'm going to try to summarize things here now before this video goes on too long. So let me just add one more thing here. Authentic unit scales. All right, let's go summarize some of my main points here. So some of the more primary things I want to talk about here that we really see pushed further than the previous match from Space Marines versus Orcs is like this new Dawn of War 4 style and identity that they seem to be carving out for themselves. You know, like Dawn of War 4 seems to be leaning much more into having large number of squad counts and having the gameplay be more focused around grander strategic formations and unit compositions and what have you like that, rather than like the sort of pinpoint tight micro of Dawn of War 2 and even Dawn of War 1. I would say Dawn of War 1, the micro is like not that important as in Dawn of War 2. Obviously, it's important, right? But it seems to me that Dawn of War 4 is leaning even more heavily into sort of just like the grand sort of positioning and formations of units, rather than having tight micro in reaction to units coming at you, like in the previous Dawn of War games. I think that's really cool. I mean, sure, I prefer the sort of Dawn of War 2 style of having very intimate relation with your squads and their abilities, and how the moment to moment gameplay interacts with the sort of emergent tactics required to deal with each unit composition you are facing, as well as in relation to the cover. But I can really get behind this side with seeing Dawn of War 4 as well. I think it's really cool. And like I said, it still retains some elements of the previous games. It's like there are still some active abilities that we're seeing, like the plasma overcharge shot from the Space Marines, or the Wraith phase ability. So they're still retaining some elements of having some active abilities. So like they're not like totally throwing micro out the window, like a total annihilation or subcom or bar, which is all about just like building as many units as possible. So it seems like Dawn of War 4 is leaning a little bit more into that style of building more units, but it's still retaining some of that those micro management aspect of your squads. Obviously not as much as the previous games, but it's still going to be there. Well, I say obviously not as much. I'm not sure that is obvious. We haven't actually played the game yet, right? So all of that we're going to find out for definitively come release of the game. So I'm not going to sit here and say that there's not going to be no micro in the game, because there's more squads and more of an emphasis on building more squads than other games. So we're really going to have to see when the game comes out to make a more of a definitive judgment of how the gameplay is actually going to function in Dawn of War 4 relative to the previous Dawn of War games. Next, so I think there are large philosophical differences between race playstyles. As we saw here, there's some pretty noticeable differences when it comes to how you're going to be taking fights and how you're going to be maneuvering your dudes, or positioning them, or building infrastructure, or what places you want to hold on the map. For example, Elliot said the Necrons don't even use cover, so that obviously has much more implications about how you are going to play with the Necrons, right? So maybe they'll lean more heavily into like a bit of an A move faction, right? Where the formation of Necrons isn't as important, because they could just be resurrected through the gallery. So you're just kind of setting them in waves, and endless marching of waves of Necron warriors, as opposed to like the Admech or Orcs or Space Marines, who might have to rely more on cover and keeping their units alive between back to base, rather than relying on Resurrection Gallery. Additionally, especially in this match, we see a lot of unique base building mechanics. I think the Necrons and the Admech are definitely leaning more heavily into how the race interact with the base and the positions you're holding, like your home territory, how they're interacting with your home territory advantage versus the Orcs. You still have some of that with all the building shooting, but you really didn't see any of that with Space Marines. Space Marines seem to offer a playstyle very similar to previous Dawn of War games, especially Dawn of War 1, as opposed to the factions we're seeing here, the Admech and Necrons, who have major battlefield implications about fighting around their home territory. Necrons fighting under their dominion, getting extra health regeneration, and maybe some other effects from upgrades we haven't seen. Or Admech, Noosphere Network, getting strength through the turrets, and maybe there's some upgrades that affect the Noosphere capabilities of units as well. I didn't really see any evidence of that in this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's in there. So I think that has a lot of very cool philosophical differences between the general design principles of each of the races. And therefore, I think this game is doing a fantastic job of really pushing the asymmetry between each of the races. I'm really glad we're seeing that, because quite frankly, we don't really get a whole lot of that in Dawn of War 1 and 2. And there's some small significant differences, like Eldar getting fleet of foot in Dawn of War 1 and 2, or Space Marines get some drop pods every now and again, right? Or the Orc buildings in Dawn of War 1 being able to shoot, or Imperial Guard being able to garrison them. Yeah, there's some interesting little tidbits of different uniqueness. But they're really, in relation to this, I think rather minor than what we're seeing here. I would say for the large part, the races, the different factions of Dawn of War 1 and 2 basically function fundamentally very similarly between each other in terms of like the general play style. Like in Dawn for One's, like, okay, I'm building my barracks building, then my armory building, then I tier up, and then I get my tier 2 units, and I click my tier up button again, you know? That's fine though. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it honestly does lack some asymmetry and some more uniqueness of the faction that I think KingArt Games is doing a fantastic job of showcasing here, and I'm really excited to see how all these different asymmetry game design is going to play out in some matches, you know, as well as speculating how different factions are going to work when they're released too. You know, again, we're talking about new content when we don't even have the base content out yet, you know. But I'm just really excited about what we're seeing here. So very cool things to consider, and I'm really I think this showcases a lot of really good features here, and they put like a lot of thought behind the design principles in Dawn 4 in general. However, it's not perfect, because let's go on to one of those other points. So the free research design. I'm not going to ramble too much about this, but I do want to just reiterate that I think that free researches, that design principle can work. It does not need a resource cost to be balanced or meaningful. However, I think the research times that we're seeing are just too quick. You know, it should be relatively difficult to get every upgrade in the game. You know, in the RTS game. So not only that principle needs to be adhered to, so players can feel like each research really matters much more due to the scarcity of the research. Like if researches are too abundant, it feels like it's just too easy to get them, right? So by increasing the scarcity, you increase the opportunity cost. In addition to that, with high opportunity costs, you're really going to lean into one playstyle over the other throughout the course of the game, because only one research is going to be active for a much larger portion of the game than what we're seeing now, where like the researchers tend to come online all at once pretty quickly, you know. So I feel like the balance of that is just a little off. So they need to like really increase the amount of time it takes to get all these researches done, so you can really feel like you're making a meaningful decision when you're deciding the sequence of each research. I think that's something that's probably going to have to be changed, quite frankly. But that's that's to be expected. Like no RTS game in the world has released in like a refined or polished or balanced state. You know, I mean, just look at how different Warcraft 3, StarCraft 2, and the Age of Empire games, how significantly different they all are now compared to their original release states. There. All right. Been talking a lot here, so my mouth is failing me. But we're almost done. For the Omnissiah, who is also the Emperor, by the way. Wink, wink. All right. Moving on. Unit reinforcement mechanics available to activate on retreat. Yeah, so this is one of the primary sort of, let's say, balance features I want to point out here that might have some severe implications about how the game tactically feels. I honestly don't think you should be able to reinforce on retreat. I think that's a little cheap and makes it a little too easy to keep squads alive, and a little too difficult for a player to be able to like let's say you got an effective flank or sweep off, and like you're trying to kill a squad, right? Well, it's probably much more difficult to be able to be rewarded for good tactical positioning if you can't even get a simple squad wipe on a Scarab because of fucking retreating and being reinforced at the same time, right? And being healed while retreating seems like not the best interaction there. Like in Dawn of War 2, for example, while you're retreating, like yes, like you can have the production queue of the reinforcement still continue while you're retreating, but it won't actually finish. You won't actually get the extra squad member or the healing from that extra squad member until you're done retreating. So I think they should try to emulate more of that sort of specific retreat mechanic in Dawn of War 2 when it comes to reinforcing on retreat. I do not think you should be able to heal and reinforce on retreat. I think that's going to have some not great implications when it comes to the tactical decisiveness and feeling of the game, and rewarding players for having good micro positioning. You know, like we don't want to be too cutthroat, of course. You know, there's a balance, but I feel like this is something that should change. Lastly, as we especially saw at the end of the game there, like there's some really great attention to detail when it comes to animations, where between all the factions, as well as the unit scales, the sizes of each unit in relation to the small units. You know, like I love how like just how massive like the some of the Necron buildings were, as well as the Knight Keep that drops down. It's just like this huge fucking drop pod, essentially, of a building that comes down. And out comes the knight that marches out after the door slowly open. I think that's all really cool, and I think KingArt's doing a fantastic job at really selling the authenticity and the let's say the weight of the different animations and whatnot we've been seeing. Obviously, in this matchup, there's not a whole lot of melee going on. I suspect that Admech and Necrons are going to be much more shooting-oriented factions than Orcs or Space Marines, who are probably going to have a few more melee units and melee playstyles to play around with than the ones we saw here. So we didn't really see too much of the melee sync mechanic being played out in this matchup because, when it comes to high technology factions like the Admech and Necrons, I guess melee is a bit beneath you most of the time, But so I can't comment too much on the sort of dynamic and kinetic animations we've been seeing for the melee sync in the previous match. However, I think that sort of system, as well as everything I described before with the animations and the bespokeness of the effects we've been seeing, like the VFX and the SFX for the different factions, really helps sell the feeling of like this is my faction identity, and I'm an Admech player, or I'm really feeling like I'm an Orc WA going on, or in this case, a Legion of Doom of Necron warriors marching out. Okay, I think that's about going to wrap up this video. It's going to be another longer one by the looks of it. If you made it this long towards the end of the video, Emperor bless you. You're a hero of the Imperium for sticking out with me and listening to my thoughts and ramblings throughout all this time. Obviously, I could really go on and on about all sorts of things we saw here. I just try to point out my thoughts as we kind of watch the video together and sort of in an off-the-cuff manner. And just like the last video, I feel like this is a good place to end it because I've talked enough, but also at the same time, not enough. We still much more discussion to have. So that's going to wrap up the video. Let me bring myself back up here. Hello. So again, I appreciate you all. Please subscribe, like, or comment. I appreciate all your feedback and all the other ideas we've been seeing both in Dawn of War Discord as well as in my previous videos comments. I definitely appreciate everyone who puts their input in, and I really think it adds to the discussion, and as well as like there's a lot of little things in the video that I missed in the last video, as well as probably in this one too. For example, I forgot your name, bro. I'm sorry, but there was one commenter who noted that the capture time for the power node seems to be a little too quick. I said that it's interesting to note that power takes time to capture, but he said like, well, that's a little too quick. So it seems to be like it needs to be more time to capture the power, which I agree with. And now I'm going to advocate for that change too. So if I agree with your view, then I'm going to try to amplify your voice as well. Okay, just to end it there. Again, thank you so much. And guys, I hope you have a good rest of your day or night. Cheers. Take care.